Hello. Okay, apparently headwear is a topic that resonates with enough of you that I'm going to, do this next installment. Although this episode, I won't be breaking a ton of new ground or whatever. I'll have to do a much more focused episode on specifically kind of more hiking, outdoorsy kind of hats. This will be a little bit more dressy, office casual kind of range again. But we're getting into spring ish soon, and so there is kind of an overlap, as winter goes out and summer comes in, and so I'll talk about summer hats again more in depth in the future too. I don't know that I need to get too deep right now on more formal hats, derbies and Homburgs and top hats. Maybe we'll discuss that later, but New Year's is already over, so unless you're going to the opera and dressed in your silk pop hat, pop top hat. um Most of the top hats you'll find are going to be more costumey, especially with March right around the corner. you know or Thanksgiving, the buckle on the brim, right? Or not the brim, but the band. Yeah, I don't know if the silk top hat is just for magicians or if that's old hat, but and of course the stovepipe, which like literally nobody wears unless they're trying to do an 1860s thing. So the not every single hat has to be just the indie fedora though either. I'll get to that in a minute. Now in the last video, I only quick shout out, I mentioned the cattleman's crown, but I didn't actually show the cattleman's crown. But of course, I'm not going to talk about cowboy hats much here. So, and I said, straw ones may be available too, and which they, are. And but again, the straw hat, much more of a summer thing. The felt hat. Personally, I can't wear felt hats once it's too warm at all. But that's the thing. The other one that deserves honorable mention that we'll get into later, but not going to talk about today. The Aussie kind of version cowboy hat, which is neither fedora nor quite cowboy hat in the sense that it doesn't have any kind of styling or anything going on here. But these became all the rage like 20 years ago. 20 years ago or so. I think people were trying to get like a Crocodile Dundee hat without realizing that he doesn't wear a hat that looks anything like that. He wears a felt one. I think I mentioned this back in my first or second video way back when. So there's that. But we will briefly go turning left. Obviously the Sherlock Holmes hat, another outdoor hat. This one's folded in half, so you can't. This side looks exactly the same as this side, so it's a baseball hat brim kind of thing ish, but to cover slightly the back of your neck, more to keep off the misty water than to keep off the sun, if I'm thinking correctly, because they usually come in wool, which is not usually what you look for in a sun hat again. And then I have this one that is more of a not so robust tweed, kind of a earth tones one with a not a much shorter brim, but it seems much shorter than the costumey Sherlock Holmes ones you're going to find on Amazon more. The kind of close cousin to that then is this one I've been kind of juggling, the Irish walking hat. With this now, this is just kind of a bucket hat with a no shape. This goes to, except this one's got a little feather and more of a texture. You can find various versions of these in herringbones and whatnot with different shapes. There's kind of an English version that Sean Connery wears famously in Last Crusade. Excuse me. This one kind of playing up to that Irish ragamuffin stereotype, So here we have, a much less defined shape. Similar to, here we go, the English. There's a much cheaper kind of English version, where here the crown can kind of. This is an unformed one that's kind of a knockoff as opposed to, but the Sean Connery one is a wool like that instead of this thinner material, and it has pinching through here. It's a shaped hat, not this amorphous thing that can take sort of a shape. This one's Scala, Dorfman Pacific, whatever. So just kind of a fun version, but a decent lighter weight version too. This is pretty heavy and pretty thick, and costs twice as much. Whereas this one you can just kind of throw on, and not meant to be, per se a total throwaway bucket fishing hat, or the kind of Florida guy hat or whatever. Definitely a more of a midwinter version of that. It's warmer, it has a lining, it's meant to look a little classier but still be a casual hat. You could get away with this for an office casual hat. You could get away with that because the brim is pretty close to a short fedora or Trilby brim. But of course, moving into that, we have this. I think this is by the same brand. I'm not sure. No, this is a different brand, I guess. I don't know. It just says D, so I don't know if that's Dorfman or not. But if you can see, a very short, stingy brim on this one, though, and not much roll in the back. And it has some ornamentation, so I don't know if that's Dorfman specific or not. But this being modeled closer to the Tyrolean hats, of course, the Alpine look. But maybe a little more of an Italian styling than an Austrian, slight variation. There's that kind of portion of Switzerland that's, more Italy than German or whatever. So, I don't know. Somebody else might be able to tell me, no, this comes specifically from the region of Liechtenstein with the, I don't know. But like I said, this definitely to me looks more Italian. This definitely looks more English. That's kind of where it's at. And then, like I said, there's also a brown one that is exactly the same. Now those are a little bit nicer versions, and then getting into just colors and patterns. This one, I have a suit that matches that. This was a straw one, which is the kind of thing I'll talk about much more in summer. Again, even more, this kind of back to the Florida guy thing. And then here's just a kind of a nice herringbone one that's kind of a grayish instead of a black. So it's another Dorfman Pacific. Yeah, so the D, yeah, these are Dorfman. So that's where that came from. So those are pretty easy to find, stuff along that line. Yada yada yada. Okay, so moving up the ladder back from that, then another English hat that's supposed to be, they call it a safari hat when I bought it, but the brim is way too stingy for any safari hat I'd want to wear on an actual safari. But for a nice midwinter hat, this is a decent one that combines well with a lot of my green stuff. And so, you can kind of see something like this. Not quite an indie hat, not quite the walking hat, kind of a, double duty. Still more or less an outdoorsy kind of hat. And then similar to that. No name. Similar to that, I have another kind of small, slightly bigger brim fedora, just a nice winter hat. if I want to look, this one looks a little more dressed up, and that one looks a little more outdoorsy with the leather buckle band. And similar to that, gray for when, again, I don't want to wear black. Although here again we got this thick outer band thing, which definitely denotes it as a more casual hat than, a nicer or thinner, the stiff brim fedoras. I don't think I have any of those that I'm going to show. And then of course tan, more of an autumn color, not so much a now color, but a nice option. And again with a leather band, so this is meant to be more of kind of a on the go fishing, hunting kind of look. But again, if I'm out doing those kind of things, most of the time I'm not going to wear a felt one, or I'm going to wear a less expensive one that I can sweat in. Here's one that's a little closer, kind of a nice, this was an Orvis they did a couple years ago. So sometimes they bring back stuff, sometimes they don't. But again, with kind of a showy offy band, meant to mimic pheasant feathers, or actually it does have real feathers glued on it. Oh no, this is actually Stetson. I'm sorry. No, I think I bought it from Orvis, but it's actually a Stetson hat. And below that, that's just the indie hat from the previous video. So I guess I don't really need to show the same hat twice, since if you wanted to see indie hats, you would have watched my other video. So there's a whole pile of my show and tell collection of what fedoras can look like. So again, this one though, closer to a safari width brim. We're getting into the 3 to 3.5 inch here. So we're right on the cusp of not really office casual anymore. Definitely almost getting into Aussie cowboy hat territory again, but not totally urban like like little no brim guy here. This one that doesn't fit, that I bought it anyway. This was like, might as well. I think it was like $12. So like I said, yeah, I don't know that I'm breaking a ton of new ground with this particular video, except pointing out that there is more than one style or, shade of hat that can really work at this time of year, especially, like I said, when I, have a lot of green, I can still pair that with a brown. Although all my brown ones are kind of buried. I mean, technically you can wear it. How's this? I mean, yeah, but does that look as good as that? Not really. To me, like I said, I'm if I'm gonna be if I'm gonna be totally contrasting, maybe a dark brown, but if I'm trying not to contrast, not so much a heathered thing with a less textured thing. I don't know. Some guys like to do, how many textures can I fit in a wardrobe, and other guys like to kind of let one texture be the focus, I guess. And I'm a little bit more in the second camp ish most of the time. So I think that's about all I can really say for this one. Like I said.